Welcome to another playoff edition of the NBA Outlet presented by Off the Glass. Today I'm joined by my good friend Nick Fay, of course, and Parth Goradia. Welcome back, Parth. Good to have you on the pod again.
Thanks, man. It's been a while. I haven't been on OTG in probably a year or so it's good to be back.
What's up, guys? Great to have Parth back. It's kind of cool to have you guys both on the same episode. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. Let's get right into it. 4 games yesterday, starting with the Raptors and Bucks. Like we talked about before, ugly offensive games. DeRozan got hot, and the Raptors tied this series at 2.
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of like a sloppy start in the first half. It wasn't like a great game from either team. Giannis wasn't his like normal crazy self. Lowry was pretty good. DeRozan really went off in this game. Obviously, he needed to bounce back after not hitting a field goal in Game 3. So he kind of impressed me a little bit. But, I mean, the Bucks were still in this game for a while. They just couldn't close out in the fourth. So I think the Raptors for the series, really a lot depends on which Lowry and DeRozan are going to show up night in and night out.
I'm surprised that Lowry has this funk in the playoffs where he's great in the regular season, and then in the playoffs, I don't know what happens to him. Or I don't know if the defense that other teams are playing changes and is more geared towards him and not letting him play to his strengths, but he just doesn't really show up in the playoffs. Any idea why, you guys?
I think it's just something. It's like something that probably started off as like a team focusing on him a little bit too much. Then he struggled, and then it's kind of like a mental thing where he kind of thinks about it too much every time.
Yeah, I mean, we know they're a one-on-one oriented team also, and a lot of his offense, I think, is off the balance and in isolation situations. They don't have tremendous ball movement. I think a ball movement, player movement offense that I think maybe is better suited in the playoffs.
That's a very good point, because Jonathan was actually, when I was talking on the pod yesterday, he talked about Dwayne Casey and the lack of changes in the offense and how he kind of relies on Lowry and DeRozan to do so much ISO stuff and create for themselves. And instead of, you have two guys who struggle in the playoff trying to make life easy for them, he kind of puts them in a tough situation.
Well, after the 27-point Bucks blowout in Game 3, there was reason to believe that this series could be over. I mean, they had stolen home court in Toronto, and then hold serve in Game 3. So you had reason to believe that the Bucks were poised to kind of win this series, but Raptors steal it back, and now those games 5s and 7s, if necessary, will be on their home floor.
Also, What the hell is going on with Jonas Valanciunas? You always hear about the backcourt players, but a couple of years ago, Valanciunas was the up and coming big man in the NBA in a lot of circles. And has he regressed? Is he just not part of the offense? I don't hear anything about him anymore.
Yeah, you know what it is? I think it's a combination of both a little bit. He regressed. He had tough parts in the season. He lost a lot of confidence. He's dealt with injuries, but I agree with you. I think he hasn't really shown up, and I thought this was a matchup where he kind of could have helped them a lot. He came off the bench yesterday. I think he was like 5 for 5, had 12 points, but still, back in the day, this is somebody they talked about as like moving forward with possibly a star at the center position, and really hasn't been that. And he hasn't really shown me enough where like the Raptors could consider maybe upgrading that position if he doesn't step up.
Yeah, for sure. So who do you guys think is in position to win this series right now?
Honestly, this is a really tough one. And this is, me and you talked about this a little bit earlier, that this pick kind of scared us because we both picked the Raptors to win the series. But now I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable that I think the Raptors will come through and win the series just because they have that home court and that Game 7 is going to be at home. But the Bucks obviously could easily come back and win if Lowry and DeRozan don't show up.
Parth?
I'm also going with the Raptors. I like what the Bucks have done. I think they're a year or so away. I think if they were fully healthy, maybe I'd feel more comfortable picking them if Jabari Parker was there as well. But, I'm not really that comfortable picking the Raptors either. But it is a big year for them. I think Lowry's a free agent. Serge is a free agent.
Yep.
So they need to make a run, a real run, Eastern Conference Finals, maybe win a couple games to maybe think about moving forward with the roster that's currently in place. But I don't know, man. It's a tough one. I'm going with the Raptors, but my confidence isn't very high in that selection.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Toronto. This is one of those where I picked based on what I thought was going to happen. And if the Bucks were to win this series, like, it wouldn't shock anybody, but I kind of want to see the Bucks get that playoff experience and see the Greek Freak advance and play some semifinal ball. So, I mean, I have no like rooting interest in this series, but if you ask me who I'd want to see win, I think, to get a player of that caliber, another opportunity to play some games, because I think Toronto will fold anyway in the next round. They'll get the winner of 2-7. So what is that? That's wait, who's two? It's got a.
It's
a
the
brain
Cavs.
fart.
They'll
Yeah.
get the Cavs.
Yeah, so neither of these teams is going to beat Cleveland. So
Yeah, I mean the Raptors. It's a really interesting case, and they kind of do this every year. They lost to Brooklyn in the first round. They got upset. Then they got swept by Washington. Then last year they barely get past the Pacers in the first round, barely past the Heat, and then they pushed the Cavs to 6. But I think this team has kind of just been a disappointment in the postseason. Do you guys think that they possibly, break this team up in the summer if they get knocked out in the first round?
I'm going to say yes, they do. I think it's a little ridiculous to be a disappointment in the playoffs for the last 3-4 seasons. Like, you want to see some sort of improvement from your core guys, maybe from the coaching staff, and you've gotten that pretty consistently throughout the regular season. But in the playoffs, I don't know what goes on with this team. It's just, it doesn't seem to click. Their offense doesn't suit playoff basketball. The defense really shuts people down, and I think changes are on the horizon if they can't make a run.
Yeah, and Jonathan was pretty enthusiastic about firing Dwayne Casey if they get knocked out early, so I think that's something we could see.
yeah, this team kind of has like a Clippers feel, right, where nothing seems to really go right for them in the postseason. I mean, I know last year they made the Eastern Conference Finals, but I feel like they constantly hit their plateau and they don't really reach their full potential when it matters most.
Yeah, and they definitely don't play their best basketball in the postseason. So,
yeah, I can definitely see Clippers East. And you're right, Harris. They did make the Eastern Conference Finals, but the way they made it, they backed into it. They didn't. I don't want to say they didn't earn it, but they didn't. They wouldn't receive high marks on their way.
Yeah, I would almost say they got lucky, kind of, just the way things played out for them last season.
Well, let's take a look at the next game from yesterday, which was the Wizards and Hawks. A little bad blood escalated after the game with Markieff Morris and Paul Millsap, about fouls and whatnot. But the Hawks, in an easy one, in a rout, and they hold serve in Game 3 at home and still trail the series 2-1.
Yeah, I mean, this was a big Game 3 win for the Hawks. I mean, going into this game, they lose this game, the series is probably over. They come out with a lot of energy. The Wizards really didn't match it. Pretty much everybody on the Wizards except John Wall had a terrible game. John Wall was the only player out there for the Wizards actually doing anything and trying to keep them in the game, and the Hawks were just too much. Dennis Schroeder picked it up. Dwight had a few okay plays, but he still really hasn't showed up this series. Paul Millsap was great. Him and Markieff Morris will probably fight before the series ends.
Wasn't Markieff Morris and his brother involved in an alleged assault or something like that a year or so ago?
Yeah, I think it was. It was like something at a Pistons game maybe, and something to do with their mother or something like that.
Interesting. I don't know the entire details, but Markieff in a fight doesn't sound that far-fetched.
Yeah, not at all.
Well, Millsap doesn't look like somebody you really want to mess with, though.
Yeah, but Markieff is constantly, there's been quotes going back and forth in the media since Game 1. And you can see on the court, they definitely do not like each other. Every time down the floor, they're just a little bit of extra contact here and there.
Nothing wrong with that in the playoffs, though. I think that just elevates the series.
I thought that Washington was going to run away with this one. I still think they'll probably win in 5 or 6. But, the Hawks just got off to that start yesterday where they were up 18 in the first quarter, and then after that it was an even ball game. But I just think they couldn't recover. They got punched in the mouth and really couldn't make a recovery after that.
Yeah, and a lot of players on that team struggled. You can't expect all these guys to struggle again next game. I think Bradley Beal probably had his worst game of the postseason so far. So
he was 6 of 20.
Yeah,
he gave himself a shot to make shots, though.
Yeah,
he really threw it up there. But I think I'm with you guys. I think the Wizards would win this in 5 or 6. I think they have the best player on the court and the best guard in the East this season in John Wall. I think he was severely underrated.
Oh, it's so great to have you on here, Parth.
Why is
I've
that?
been on the John Wall wagon all year long.
Oh,
And
yeah?
I just feel like he's been getting underrated. And I mentioned this to Harris a few times off air. It's just like, Isaiah Thomas has been great too, and he's obviously averaged around 30 points a game. But John Wall has done so much for his team, and it kind of just like flies under the radar.
Isaiah Thomas doesn't play defense.
Exactly. That's another point that I've made.
Part of that is like his height, and I get it. But what do you want me to do? I can't make the guy taller.
Exactly. No, it's a true fact because every time you go down the court, like if you're the opposing team, you're like, let's attack Isaiah Thomas. So,
agreed. But John Wall, best guard in the East, probably the third best guard in the league this year. Third best point guard, I should say, third or fourth, depending on who you like. But yeah, he's the best player in the series, and I'm rolling with the Wizards in 5 or 6.
And I think it'll be tough for the Hawks to kind of put up this many points again. Offensively, they haven't been great this season. They hit a lot of shots yesterday. I'm pretty sure they shot a high percentage from 3 that they haven't shot in game 1 or 2. So it'll be hard for them to kind of keep this pace up.
All right, I gave my prediction. I said, I said Wizards in 6. What do you guys think about the rest of the series?
I'm going to stick with – I think I predicted Wizards in 6 as well, and I'll probably stick with the Wizards. I mean, I think that the Wizards kind of had a good lesson for them actually yesterday in Game 3, getting blown out like that and kind of realizing they need to step their game up. Kind of, I think, will help them in the long run.
You know what? I'm going to be bold and pick the Wizards in 5.
All right, well, there are the predictions. Let's take a look at the third game from yesterday, which was the best game of the night, no question. And the Grizzlies put a little bit of a scare into the Spurs now. Series tied up at 2. We saw big shots in this game, both from Leonard, obviously Conley with the shot to force overtime, and then Gasol, the game winner. The Grizzlies now hold serve at home court, and we're headed back to San Antonio. I don't necessarily think this series is I think it's going to be very tough for the Grizzlies to win a big game on the road, but they showed me a lot yesterday.
I mean, if you're the Grizzlies, you're just kind of hoping to push this to 7. And, anything can happen in a game 7. Even though the Spurs will be at home, you still have a shot. And the Grizzlies definitely really impressed me yesterday. Mike Conley really pushed his game to another level, hitting big shots, and he just wanted the ball in late game situations, especially on a night where I think Marc Gasol didn't really have his best game. And I'm the Spurs. I'm a little bit worried. I think the Spurs are running a little bit too much ISO. They're not running their offense as much, and I think some of that has to do with the Grizzlies being a little extra physical and just disrupting everything. So going into the series, I really didn't think much of it. I thought the Spurs would, probably beat them in 5, but now I'm thinking this will probably go 7, and the Grizz are going to keep it interesting.
You know what would really be interesting if Chandler Parsons could play? And what's going on with him, man? Is it another knee injury?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's another knee injury. He's had other numerous injuries through the years, and that's like a contract going in the offseason where you looked at it and like, they're taking a huge risk signing him to that money.
I know he had microfracture, I think, when he was with Dallas, and no one ever really recovers from microfracture surgery, or is like their former selves before the surgery. So that's a shout out to Parsons' agent for getting that contract for him, but not the smartest deal for the Grizzlies. But they have James Ennis stepping up for them, starting in place of Parsons. And last 2 games they've been good, especially last night. James Ennis didn't have the best shooting night in the world, but when it counted, he played defense on Kawhi and probably was not. I don't want to say the difference, but definitely a big part of why the Grizzlies won in overtime.
Yeah, no, he forced a late game turnover on Kawhi too. So I think the changes that the Grizzlies made, adding him to the starting lineup and adding Zebo, really made a big difference and kind of gave him that extra offensive firepower.
All right, yeah, and obviously we know Fizdale has been the personality of the playoffs, taking on the referees and the NBA and the fines. Conley said he wouldn't have to pay that, but Fizdale came out and said, everyone talks about how overpaid Mike is, and comes out yesterday with a vintage Mike Conley performance.
Yeah, definitely. He came through. He came through in the clutch, hit the big shots. Gasol didn't probably have his best game yesterday, and Conley stepped up. So I was pretty impressed. I'm impressed by the Grizz and impressed with this series.
Mike Conley is damn good, and I think he probably has the best offhand floater in the league. Maybe him and Kyrie are dishing it out for the top offhand floater, but yeah, Mike Conley's damn good, worth every dime, and everything will kind of even out based on where he is on the point guard ranks versus maybe Steph, Russ, when all these other guys are able to sign their big money extensions. So he deserves what he got for sure. And yeah, great game last night by him. Almost got a triple-double.
Exactly, and I think it's sad to say, but him getting the big contract finally made people realize how good he was. You know, like
Still
a lot of
hasn't had
times.
an All-Star appearance though, which is surprising because he deserves it. I know the guard position in the West is super tough, and it is a popularity contest, as we saw with Russell Westbrook not starting, which was terrible. But yeah, I hope he gets on one of these All-Star teams or maybe an All-NBA team. I know both are going to be tough, but he's damn good, man. You can do a lot worse than Mike Conley.
I think it's also what he means to that franchise. It was they kind of had no choice but to pay him because without him, I think they'd be really lost. He's just such an important cog in anything they're trying to do and get over the hump. They've had a similar roster for years. They kind of underachieved a little bit in the regular season and got rewarded with the Spurs in the first round. But like I said, they're still going to have to win these games, either a game 5 or a game 7, which is a difficult task. But give them credit for the way they've battled against a really good Spurs team. And I think Conley's just, even if they did overpay and it's an enormous contract, I think it's kind of necessary for their team.
Yeah, I mean, if they didn't sign him, somebody else was going to sign him to a big contract. And I think Mike Conley is the one mismatch that the Grizzlies have that's like really big to their advantage in this series. Obviously, Tony Parker has looked a little bit better, and Patty Mills can give you something off the bench, but he can outplay both those guys, and that kind of gives the Grizzlies a shot.
Yeah, Parker was pretty good last night. He was all right.
Yeah, he has his games where, you know, he kind of looks like vintage Tony Parker, and he gets in the lane at ease, and in other games he doesn't really do much of anything.
Yeah, Aldridge needs to give them more. He can't be playing 42 minutes and rebound the ball twice. I think Aldridge, a little overwhelmed by 11 rebounds from Zebo and 12 from Gasol. They really kind of manhandled them inside yesterday. Yeah,
Mark has definitely been getting the better side of Pau. Aldridge, he just needs to be more aggressive. You know, offensively, rebounding. He kind of falls out of the loop, and you kind of forget he's out there. He's, you know, it's kind of hard to think about. He was the same guy in Portland that was dropping like 25 plus a game, hitting big playoff shots. Yesterday, he looked like he didn't really even want to see the ball. He had a few nice dunks, but other than that, like, he didn't do much.
Yeah, his game has changed from his Portland days where he had the ultimate green light. Now there's more of a sense of ball movement that they have to kind of have him in terms of the Spurs system, and he just doesn't. I don't know if he doesn't get the same looks, but I don't think he has the same green light that he did.
Yeah, and he doesn't seem to have the same rhythm. Obviously, not taking as many shots is going to kind of like mess up your rhythm, especially when you're a jump shooter and you're shooting a lot of fadeaways, mid-range game, and I think that kind of hurts him a little bit too. I like to see him more aggressive attacking the rim.
Who is that? Aldridge?
Yeah, Aldridge. I'd like to see him more, your jump shot's not falling. Like, there's not the only thing you can do. You can go out there, rebound, grab a few offensive boards, get a few putback points, do something.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to make some adjustments, but I still have confidence that they'll be able to clean up at home. I'm going to say Spurs in 6. I think they'll be able to get 5, and then.
Yeah, I think Spurs in 6 makes sense too. It's tough. I could easily see the Grizz pushing it to 7, getting another game at home, but I don't see them probably beating the Spurs on their home court in a game 7 either way. So give me the Spurs in the series. But the Grizzlies have definitely impressed.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think home court's going to be really important in this series. I don't think a road team will win a game. So I got Spurs in 7. I think the Grindhouse is a tough place to play, and I think Memphis will be able to get game 6 there. So Spurs in 7 for me. It's hard to go against the Spurs.
Yeah, it's hard to go against Pop and Kawhi, and just Kawhi was so lights out at the end of that game. You kind of expect a better first half performance from the next few, and I think they'll get some more contributors from the rest of the squad.
Yeah, and the last game of the night yesterday, as I was dozing off, was the comeback of the Golden State Warriors and basically the execution of the Portland Trailblazers. If there was any opportunity, I want to say to get back in the series, but to make them sweat a little bit, it was last night. They hung a 67 spot on them at half. They were up 67-54. It was a 13-point game. And all of a sudden in the second half, the Warriors exploded.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it right on the head. They had no Steve Kerr, no Kevin Durant, no Matt Barnes, no Sean Livingston. So, the Warriors are shorthanded. They're missing their head coach. This is a game you need to win. You get Nurkic back. Obviously, he's not 100% healthy, but he still gives you some decent minutes. And you have the lead. You have the lead, in the second half too, and you're not able to hold on. The Warriors just kind of do their thing. And, when I watch a Warriors game, especially in the series, I just kind of, see the Blazers have the lead, and I know it's just going to be a race in the fourth quarter.
The Blazers are really disappointed, man. They didn't have Golden State didn't have KD in game 2, and then they didn't have 2 rotation players, the head coach and KD in game 3, and Portland couldn't get one of those games like that. I know Nurkic has been out. He played last night, but he's not the same Nurkic. But still, I love that backcourt that Portland has. I don't want to say I'm a homer because I'm not a Portland Trailblazers fan necessarily, but I enjoy watching them play. I root for him, and I'm just disappointed that they couldn't get one of those 2 games.
And I would say, it's not the backcourt's fault either. It's because, they're putting up 50-plus points almost every game. The first game when they put up 70-plus and they lost, that kind of told me everything I need to know about the series. It's just Dame and CJ can put on a show, but the Warriors just have too much as a team.
Yeah, Iguodala was
JaVale McGee has stepped up big in the playoffs too.
Yep, and they've done it, which is crazy. They've won 3 games, and Clay had been off for a couple of games. He had one good game, I think, but like you said, no KD, no Sean Livingston, no Steve Kerr. This has El Sweepo written all over it.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with. I'm going with a sweep here. Tough for the Blazers, tough for Dame, but I don't think they have enough to beat the Warriors.
I'm with you guys. I mean, they don't have enough to beat them. I don't want to say it'll be a sweep. I want to go with the gentleman's sweep, Warriors in 5, but it's – I'm going to go with Warriors in 5. I really hope Portland gets one. One of my friends is actually living out in Portland right now, so hopefully he gets to go to Game 4 and gets to see it win. But
yeah, it's always nice when your team can win that one game. At least kind of getting swept is just the worst feeling ever.
Yeah, Corey might feel that today. Sorry, Corey.
Is that a preview? Is that what that was, Harris?
No, I think
it's a perfect transition. So
so we'll take a look at some of the games today and make our predictions and let you know where those series are at. First and foremost, the 1:00 game on ABC. The Cleveland Cavaliers, defending champs, look to finish off Corey Waldron's Indiana Pacers. What do you guys think?
I mean, it's been a series of missed opportunities for the Pacers. Obviously they could have won Game 1. Game 2, they even had a shot. Game 3, they had a 25-point halftime lead, and they blow that to LeBron pretty much by himself. I think this is just a disappointing – it's been a disappointing season for the Pacers, and it's been a disappointing postseason, especially when you get a matchup with a 2-seed Cavs and you have opportunities to win games and you don't pull through. It's just, I think we could possibly see this as Paul George's last game in a Pacer uniform.
It's very possible.
Making predictions.
Very possible.
Indiana, man, they've kind of been up and down all year. When they initially made all the moves that they made in the offseason, I was like, hey, well, this team is going to be good. They'll be versatile. They have the pieces to play big. They have the pieces to play small. They can slow it down. They can play fast. They looked like a really versatile roster. And then when it came down to playing in the season, they had the versatility, but it was mediocre versatility. And instead of being good at one thing or being great at one thing, they were mediocre at all different types of styles of play. So it just never really worked out. And I thought getting Lance, I thought Paul George and the way he's been playing the last month, but hey, they'd have a chance to not push Cleveland, but at least make it interesting. And it has been interesting. Games 1 and 3 definitely been interesting and worth the watch. But it's hard not to pick Cleveland to sweep here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you have to think about Game 3 and losing that lead. The Pacers kind of just lose all hope and energy for Game 4, and I just don't. And like you said, it like going to the season, Harris and I predicted this team probably being like at least a top 6 seed. I thought they had pretty good potential, especially with the pieces they added, and it just really hasn't worked out. They kind of just lacked that extra edge. Lance has kind of added some of that in the playoffs, but it's been a weird situation. And then like the comments from Paul George, what do you guys think about that, calling out his teammates?
I don't really mind it too much. He sounds like he's crying and he wants to get out of Indy, but I don't know. I'm just gonna put it as passion, that he really wants to win, and especially for him, like he was in a position to beat LeBron when LeBron was in Miami, and it's hard seeing yourself going from, hey, I'm this close to getting on top of the mountain, to being knocked down and I can't get past the first cliff. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's a good point.
Mentally, I feel like that weighs on anyone. When you're so close, and then you were right there. You know what you can be, but you with this roster just can't get to that point to where you can truly contend.
It's hard for me to see anytime a team has an emotional loss like Indiana did, especially on their home floor, to blow a 20-plus point lead, like Nick said, to come back and think they're going to extend the series. I think I won't say it's unrealistic, because obviously they could win today, but I think Cleveland finishes them off because of the emotional roller coaster. And anytime LeBron James has an opportunity to rest and wait for his next opponent, like we said, would be the winner of the Bucks Raptors, which could go 7, could be 4, 5, 6 days of rest if they finish off today, instead of having to go back to Cleveland and play in that game 5. I don't see any way that this would get to 6, 5 max. So I think LeBron wants – it's a point to be made that LeBron wants that extra rest.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think LeBron's going to want to finish this out. Let's talk about the Cavs side a little bit. I think also when you have that type of comeback, it gives your squad like a little extra confidence and energy. So I think the Cavs will kind of carry off that. And that's a great point about rest, because that Bucks and Raptors series is definitely going to keep getting more and more physical. So I think that's definitely an advantage for them. And the Cavs could use the extra rest, because I think they're going to have to rely on LeBron more than they thought they would have to in this postseason. Just some of the other guys haven't stepped up. And defensively, I think they have question marks. And LeBron being, the ability to clean up a lot of messes, will have to play a lot of minutes.
Yeah, they should win this game 4. Cleveland should. Kyrie and Kevin Love should be well rested after not playing at all in the fourth quarter and being a part of that comeback. So I think Kyrie will be a little embarrassed. Kyrie will probably be a little embarrassed, I think, about being benched for the whole fourth quarter. So I expect him to come out big. Yeah, I think Love and Kyrie are going to have big games today. And unfortunately, I'm going to watch a couple playoff games at Buffalo Wild Wings with Sam Churchill, who used to actually write for OTG. Shout out to Sam Churchill. But he's a big Indiana fan, so I'm sure he's going to be drunk by the time we're done.
Well, shout out to him. If I'm not mistaken, Sam, I think is also a Green Bay Packer fan, so always have love for Packer fans.
He is.
Well, let's take a look at that second game today, which is my OKC. No, I'm kidding. Just a series me and Nick disagree on, so I'm pulling for the Thunder. Also, part of me really wants to see the Thunder and Warriors matchup, which is probably never going to happen, but I just think that would be great for the NBA. And game 4, 3:30 ABC, that nice doubleheader they got the Rockets leading this series 2-1. Thunder's barely hang on. Harden could have put them up 3-0 with the potential game winner the other night. And game 4 in OKC. What do you guys got?
I mean, I think even though the OKC won game 3, I think it says a lot about the series. They played really well. They had to lead most of the game, but the Rockets were still able to come back. Kind of like in game 2, they just didn't complete the comeback. And I just think Houston has too much firepower for OKC to match for 4 quarters and, obviously for 7 games. So I just think the Rockets will come out big in this one. I think the players that didn't play well last game didn't shoot well. They'll get some nice shooting performances. Patrick Beverley won't play bad again. Give me Houston, and they go up 3-1.
Yeah, I like Houston in the series, but I'm going to take OKC in the game tonight, and hopefully they even it up 2-2. I think I don't want to say Russell Westbrook has to do too much, because he does have a decent roster around him, but the other guys aren't stepping up to where they can really help Russell. So he does, in the end, have to do a little bit too much. But I think if he wants to win, he has to trust his teammates. Like he can't do it alone, and might as well. Like I get the alpha dog mentality where, hey, if my teammates are going to help me, I'm going to try to carry my team through and win. But if he really wants like the best chance to win, he's going to have to trust his teammates.
I think in Game 3, that's why the Thunder won. Is because Russell did a better job of making his teammates better. He also passed on the ball more, but he also did a good job of setting them up for successful positions, easy points, easy scores, kind of get the confidence going. And Roberson also shot well, which is not something you're going to see every night.
Wait, what do you mean he can't do it alone? He can't take 18 shots in the fourth quarter again?
Yeah, I think you caught my gist there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
that's the beauty of Westbrook, though. He's like that. I know Bill Simmons always talked about the 80-20 or 90-10 guy where you love 90% of what he does and you just have to live with the other 10%. Sometimes Westbrook taking 18 shots in the fourth quarter is that other 10%. And in order to have the other greatness that he is, you kind of have to deal with that. But I hope, he had that. I think, did he have a 50-point triple-double in Game 2?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, and he took like 70 shots, though.
Yeah, it's incredible that he scores that much while still doing other things. But I think a more modest triple-double, and by modest I mean 25 to 30 points for him, I think that is more in tune with their success in terms of winning than a 50-point triple-double would be.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, seeing a high assist number, like 15 plus, will be a big boost for the OKC.
Well, I'm going to stay with my Thunder pick in the series for the reasons I stated before, because I want to, not to say I feel for Russ because he's had such an amazing season, but I like the storyline of how far he could take this thing. But Houston clearly has the better team, more well-rounded, more weapons. And, I'd say in my mind, I kind of understand they'll probably win the series, but I'm behind the Thunder movement right now and just seeing how far Russ could take this.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Houston.
Houston wins the series. OKC wins the game tonight, Game 4.
All right, well, the TNT Bulls are in action. I think it's like 20 straight the Bulls have won at home on TNT. They didn't look great in Game 3. They had this series, it didn't say wrapped up, but they seemed to have an advantage in a lot of areas over Boston before Rondo got hurt. So what happens here in Game 4 and the rest of the series?
I mean, that absence of Rondo is going to kill the Bulls. And that probably kills any shot they had at winning the series, I think, unless, they can get Dwayne Wade to turn back the clock completely and play like 36-plus minutes and put up a ton of points, because they just need somebody else other than Butler. They did a good job locking in on Butler last game, and Boston was able to kind of get their offense moving a little better in Game 3 too, and I think that'll kind of happen in Game 4 as well, because not only was Rondo giving them energy, playmaking on the offensive side, he was also doing a great job disrupting Boston's plays and the ball movement they had. So I think that loss is really going to hurt the Bulls and kind of hurt any chance they had in the series. I think the Celtics are going to kind of find their rhythm in this game too.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Nick. I think not having Rondo really hurts the Bulls, and it's kind of surprising to say just because of the way Rondo's season has gone with Chicago, really up and down. But he played great the first 2 games, and that man, he's a tough-ass dude, because I remember when he was with Boston, he tore his ACL and then still played a little bit. And same thing with that finger. He broke his finger, played a little bit. And so Rondo's tough as hell, but
would it surprise me if Rondo suited up for a Game 6 or Game 7 with a broken thumb? It probably would not.
Yeah, I don't think the team would allow him to do that, but
could probably help his jump.
I bet if you leave it up to him, he definitely would try.
Probably could help his jump shot.
It might help his jump shot, to be honest. It is the thumb on his shooting hand.
No, I'm not hating on Rondo. He was good in those first 2 games. I kind of wanted to see what the Bulls could do.
I think if he stays healthy, the Bulls win the series.
No,
I still think the Bulls have a really good chance. Game 4 at home, they're up 2-1, and they have the best player on the court, Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I think the issue for them is just like, is Fred Hoiberg going to realize that like his point guards really aren't good enough to play, and that he has to kind of go with the no point guard lineup at points? Or is he going to stay with, a Michael Carter Williams or Jerry and Grant, two guys who had their issues in Game 3?
Yeah, I would
think that. Where the hell is Cam Payne? Is he hurt?
I'm not sure. I know like he was playing for a while, then he got sent back to the D League. I don't know if he's hurt or if he's just not part of their plans. It's kind of weird because they send McBuckets out and Taj Gibson, and they don't really use him that much.
Right? 2 rotation players for your future point guard who you might need right now, but I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know if he's just not in the rotation, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I think even if he plays either, like he's not much better than those two guys too. So, and they probably could use McBuckets right now, and they probably could use Taj Gibson, especially because they've been dominating inside. So having another player like Gibson who, gives him that physical presence would definitely have its impact in the series.
I would think that if the Bulls want to win this series, they would have to win Game 4.
Yeah.
I don't think they could afford to – I know they won 2 in Boston, but I don't think they could afford to give the Celtics back that much momentum.
Exactly. I think, I would like to see Dwayne Wade, run point for a while today, kind of run the offense. He's kind of turned more into a facilitator later in his career. And I think it would kind of help the offense to get things going and kind of make it a little bit easier for Jimmy Butler, who definitely struggled in the first half of Game 3.
I agree. I think putting D Wade in more of a point guard facilitator type role would only help the team.
And he's kind of developed some nice chemistry with a pick and roll and a few guys in that team, specifically Felicio, who's had a nice impact in the series too.
Felicio's the guy that didn't allow Wade to get a triple-double one of these games, right?
Yeah.
I guess they've worked out their kinks.
Yeah, he probably had something to say about that.
Well, let's take a look at this final game of the night tonight in a series that has taken a dramatic turn because the curse might be real in Los Angeles.
Yeah, bad news in the Clipperland again. Blake Griffin's out. He's out for the rest of the postseason, and I think that just puts a nail in the coffin on this Clippers team. Not maybe for this series. I think Chris Paul still gets them enough against the Jazz to probably win this series, but I just think this is the last year we're going to see Chris Paul, Blake Griffin in a Clipper uniform.
You know what I would do? I don't know if the money works, but get Paul George on the Clippers. Make that trade.
I don't know how they can make it work. They'd have to probably give up Blake.
That's what I'm saying. Give up Blake and get Paul George in return. Then you have a top 5 center, top 5 point, top 5 small forward. I think, and I don't know if it solves their issues, but at least
gives them a better balance. Yeah, better balance, I think, and that because you've definitely seen the Clippers have success without Blake, taking nothing away because he's a great player. But Chris Paul and DeAndre definitely have a nice chemistry with that pick and roll, and throwing somebody in like Paul George who gives him another great defender and somebody who can give him those late game buckets.
Like I said, I don't know if the money works. I don't know if Indiana will do it. Is Blake a free agent this summer?
He has an early termination option, so he's going to probably be a free agent.
He's going to be a free agent, but I don't know if that would work. But maybe a sign and trade. I don't know, but we'll see.
Well, with Gobert's injury now, I still think it's possible that the Clippers can win this series without Blake, but to expect them to go further than that, I'm kind of disappointed because I wanted to see. I've been talking about the Clippers-Warriors series for a while, the potential of that. Not that they would beat them, but, give them a run for their money and play better than most people would give them a chance just because of Paul's competitiveness. But to see Blake go down like this, and again, the playoffs last year, they were snake-bitten against Portland. And it's funny because they would have played Golden State too, winning that series. But it's unfortunate just – sometimes the way things turn out, and I think this is the last year we'll see the Clippers, and we've been talking about this for a while, but this is the last year we'll see the Clippers as we know them right now.
And it's kind of weird. I feel bad for Blake because it seems like he always gets weird type of injuries. He has an injury to his big right toe. and like that's going to keep him out the rest of the postseason. So that just kind of sucks. And like for him, he's obviously catching a lot of hate these last few years. Punching the trainer, not showing up in the playoffs, and then all the injuries. So I think he'll probably be happy to change scenery, but I would think he'd be more likely to stay than Chris Paul.
You think so? You think Chris Paul heads out of town?
I think Chris Paul knows that he needs to win a championship, and it's not going to happen in Los Angeles. A lot of rumors about him going to the Spurs.
That would be something serious.
Yeah, I heard somebody even mention the Bucks. I think it was like on a Bill Simmons podcast. Someone said that they talked about the Bucks, but I think the Spurs would definitely be like lethal.
Bucks would be interesting too, because the path is definitely easier in the East in terms of volume of teams that are true high quality teams. Of course, you have to go through the best player, but
yeah, I mean, speeding up the process of the Greek Freak by adding Chris Paul there, I feel like there are some players that could stunt growth, and there's some people that could speed up the growth. And I think Paul being in Milwaukee would definitely speed up the Greek Freak growth, who a lot of people believe is an MVP candidate next season.
Well, if you really think about it, I wasn't as sure about it yesterday when I thought about it, but I just thought about it in my head. Like Chris Paul, Chris Middleton, Jonathan Antetokounmpo, Jabari Parker, and Thon Maker. Like you have so much explosive potential with that starting five, and just Chris Paul able to just throw the ball anywhere and set these guys up for either alley-oops or open jump shots.
With all that being said, can the Clippers still win the series?
Yeah, no, I think they can. I think Chris Paul showed me enough in a the last game, and him and DeAndre Jordan inside with no Gobert, who doesn't look like he's going to be able to come back in the series anytime soon, is really going to decide what happens.
I really like the Jazz. They're one of my two East Coast teams or West Coast teams along with Portland. And I don't know, not having Gobert is tough. He does so much for them defensively. But I think Utah pulls it out. I hope Utah does, because I already know what's going to happen with the Clippers if they make it to round 2. They're going to lose. So I'm hoping Utah wins tonight and wins the series just to get a different look.
Yeah, and I mean, Gobert comes back for the next round. There'll be a better matchup than the Clippers without Blake Griffin. So
right.
And one thing I think you got to I like watching the Jazz too. I think putting Gobert in the starting lineup when they traded Enes Kanter was the change of things for that team and kind of set them up going forward. And I like all the depth they've had on this team. They have a lot of smart players, and when they're fully healthy, I think I don't think they'll beat the Warriors, but they could probably give us an interesting series.
Who, the Jazz and the Warriors?
Yeah, I think that would probably be fun to watch. It'd be nice to see the Jazz have to compete with the Warriors if Gobert is healthy.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, so
I'm
picking the Jazz tonight and picking the Jazz for the series.
What about you, Harris?
I'm going to stick with the Clippers. I think on their home floor and with Gobert not being 100%, being, like I said, they stole home court back from Utah. And plus, I'm a big fan of Chris Paul's competitiveness and feel kind of bad for him. He's gotten some very unlucky breaks over the last couple of years, whether it's injuries, whether it's blowing that lead a couple of years ago in the playoffs. I think his legacy is going to be tainted forever in the fact that he couldn't get over the hump.
Do you think Chris Paul still finished as the top 5 point guard of all time, or do you think this lack of championships is going to keep him out of that?
He's right there. I know people are going to hold this against him, and
well, where do you put Stockton up there, Nick? In your opinion, is he top 5?
Honestly, I'm just asking because I actually, one of the writers on OTG wrote an article last year about Chris Paul and his numbers compared to like the top 5 all-time players. And his numbers actually, I think it was advanced stats wise, were better than most of them, or at least better than at least all of them in one category. So I would think Chris Paul would squeeze in that top 5. I think a lot of people hate on him for not having a championship, but it's not like Chris Paul's never had a nice postseason performance or he's never hit a clutch basket. Even in the end of Game 3, he was huge. He was getting buckets in the paint, getting in the paint at ease. And then in that Spurs series, not last year, the year before that, when he hit that big teardrop over Tim Duncan. So I think like the fact that he hasn't won a championship doesn't mean that he hasn't done anything in the postseason. It's just like people are going to look at it that way and say that he's not clutch or, he can't win in the postseason, when a lot of it I don't think falls on him.
I mean, he's a sub 6 foot point guard. It's this game is not built for point guards to be the best player on the team. You know what I mean? There's obviously, or at least on a championship team, there's obviously outliers. You say Steph was the best point guard on his team, but he had a quality team around him. Maybe Chauncey Billups in 2004, maybe Tony Parker in 2007. But those are 3 years out of how many championships we've had in the NBA where the point guard is probably the best player. So it just doesn't suit up. It's not ideal to have the point guard be the best player. Maybe Chris Paul has to be the number 2 guy, or maybe just has to have a better team around him. But I get why people don't like Chris Paul. He complains a lot. He plays, I don't want to say dirty, but he's kind of a pit bull in that aspect, and people don't like being uncomfortable. So I get the hate, but he's the best point guard of this generation, or of his generation. Sure.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you said this before in the past, is, like Chris Paul makes so many decisions during the game, and like 99% of the time he makes the right decision. So just having somebody to run the show out there and just be like a second coach on the floor just makes such a big impact. And he obviously makes his teammates better, and that's something I always look for at a point guard position.
Yeah, I think the beauty with him moving on to maybe moving on from the Clippers to maybe a Milwaukee or definitely the Spurs is that he wouldn't have to make the decision 99% of the time.
Yeah, he would be, it'd be a less stress on him, and he'd be able to kind of pick and choose where he wanted to be that scorer. And even sometimes on the Clippers where like they need a bucket, like Blake's not getting it. DeAndre obviously isn't getting a bucket by himself. They need Chris Paul to go down and get them a late game shot. He needs to also run the show, set up everybody for passes. So they're asking a lot out of him. So in another situation, it probably would be easier for him, and he'll be better rested, especially at his age.
But yeah, to answer the question, whoever asked it, is he top 5? He's top 5 in my eyes.
Yeah, so I have top 5 for me. Top 5 for you, Harris?
Yeah, I want to say for guys that I've seen in their primes. I mean, it's hard for me to go back.
Yeah, that's always the toughest thing, is to talk about guys that you've never really seen play, which I always think it's funny when I see kids on Twitter talking about ranking players and they're younger than I.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens with that. That wraps it up for us, but honestly, these 4 games today, a lot of good action. If you're just having a relaxing Sunday, should be a great day for NBA fans. If not, enjoy the weather. I know it's beautiful out here in the Northeast today.
So what do we all have? The Cavs winning today. I had Houston. You guys had OKC. Who do we have for Boston and Bulls?
Bulls.
Bulls. What about you, Parth?
Oh, man, I think I'm going to go with Chicago as well.
I'm going to go with Boston. I think the series is going to go 7. The Celtics will win.
I think it's a toss-up. That match is that game 4 is a toss-up.
Yeah. And then tonight, I think this is tough. I want the series to go longer, so I'm going to go with the Jazz tonight. What are you guys thinking?
I got Clippers.
I got Jazz.
Yeah, so – but Harris said it, a ton of great basketball, also a great day outside. So as always, thank you guys for listening, and make sure you hit that subscribe button.
All right, guys, take care.
And Parth, thanks for hopping on.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
No problem.